Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to our next edition of Human Hacking Live. We are with a really special guest, Charles Liu. I love the name of your company, the Liu Firm. It's pretty ingenious, considering what you do. So we'll get into that. But just a little information on Charles. He's got a really interesting background, which is why we asked him to come on the show. He actually started off his life as a bouncer, and now has become a world-class entrepreneur with some really, really interesting concepts, products, and services. So we thought the journey to go from where he was to where he is could be something that we can all learn from, and some of the lessons learned and the struggles. So Charles, thanks for coming on the show and spending some time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I think it would be interesting first is to start off is like when you were like in the blue collar work, right? When you were sitting there as a bouncer, what made you say, you know what, I want to do more. I want to be an entrepreneur. Where did that come from?
So I really didn't. I was actually very happy being a bouncer. It was quite a simple life. You get paid primarily cash at the end of the night. Depending on the specific location, you get paid very, very well. And your life was very simple. You showed up at 8 o'clock, you checked out at 2 a.m., barring an altercation or a knocked out tooth or which I've had, or something a little more rigorous or a little more physical. You went home and you just did the same thing the next day. My life consisted of kind of eating and working out and training to be a better bouncer. So it was a very simplistic life. How I actually got into the entrepreneurial endeavors was a little bit more interesting in that my boss, if you will, bought a bar, and that bar became a contested action, a contested purchase. And my boss did not have an attorney nor the means to hire an attorney at that point in time. So he decided that the next best thing would be for his security to be his attorney. And that actually surprisingly, miraculously worked out extremely well. And I ended up getting a piece of that bar. So that was my first foray into this entrepreneurial world, if you will.
Now, did you have a legal degree at that moment?
I did. I had a legal degree.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'd never stepped foot into court. I had never done anything even as complicated as a driver's license ticket or reprimand. So this was certainly outside of my area of expertise. Then again, anything would have been outside of my area of expertise. So it worked out fortuitously, much better than it could have or should have. And it started me just into this, very interesting, if you will, entrepreneurial, hospitality focused, at least initially, adventure.
So, one of the questions that I get very often from people in my industry is, should I start my own business? Should I go into this for myself, or should I just go get a job working for someone else? And of course, I'm glad a number of them chose to come get a job with me because we need good employees.
Sure.
But when I get asked that question, I thought maybe from your viewpoint, what are some of the lessons you learned and taking that path? Now you have a piece of this bar, but now you own a company. And what does that company do?
So I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by very, very efficient and very effective partners. And those partners have enabled me to be a little more creative as to what we do. So we have a technology company, we have a private equity fund, we have a law firm, the Liu Firm, and we have a hospitality branch, a hospitality division, restaurant company. So again, I've been very, very fortunate to be a component or a cog in the machine of some very successful machines or gear in some very successful machines with some really incredibly talented individuals, which again has let me be a little bit more on the not creative from an artistic perspective, as you can see by the art behind me, but creative in a business perspective. So, looking at things and what I've always tried to think about, I think entrepreneurial endeavors for myself at least come down to two things: resiliency and the ability to bounce back. I always like to quote Rocky: it's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, how much you can take and keep moving forward. And I think the other thing is just the ability to be to some degree prescient and have an understanding of forthcoming technologies, certainly not to any real prophetic degree, but the ability to look at things and look at the climate and look at the geography and understand, at least to yourself, where you believe everything is moving. So, very, very good examples of that would be Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and all of these incredible entrepreneurs, if you will, business people that we all look at and idolize. But it doesn't even have to be on that scale. You can look at the small restaurants that you walk into that you say, oh, that's really interesting. That restaurant painted a really fun mural on a wall, knowing that that mural would be used for social media, knowing that people would then tag that mural, knowing that that would drive traffic to that website. So it could be very granular. But again, these are prescient thoughts by entrepreneurs of all levels. And then the other thing, as I mentioned, I believe is resiliency, because the fact of the matter is you are going to get your ass whipped. Like, you're going to take beat downs that are unfathomable to you in your current position. And you develop a resiliency, a strength, a constitution that I don't believe you would do in a normal profession, because if things get as bad as they sometimes do in your normal profession, the company would go out of business or you'd be let go. But that is not an alternative as an entrepreneur. The company certainly could go out of business, but as opposed to being an employee, that's unfortunately not the end of it when you're an entrepreneur. Oftentimes that's just the beginning, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I think it's resiliency. Out of just a very, very quick anecdotal piece for you. I had a dinner a while ago with an individual, a very, very well-known individual, and it was a very business-oriented dinner. And at the end of the dinner, I had 30 seconds while everybody was exiting towards the door. And my question to him was very, very simple. What differentiates you from other entrepreneurs and other business people? And his answer was equally simplistic, but I think brilliant in its simplicity. And he said, I suffer better than other people. And I thought that was such an interesting point to be made. And it's something that I can see myself, that, again, it's a resiliency, a thick skin, an armor, something that allows you to be a little more resilient, or unfortunately just to suffer a little better. So you suffer a little better in silence. You react a little less aggressively. Your movements are maybe a little more measured. Just something that allows you to continue in the face of adversity, oftentimes overwhelming adversity.
Yeah, it's very, very fascinating. We had a question. Let me just get it here. It says, how do you collect data and use it to your advantage?
So I think it's really interesting. I'm a big reader. I've always been a big reader. I remember when I was 5 years old, my older brother gave me a copy of The Lord of the Rings, which, is a fairly lengthy book. And it was some pretty deep reading for a 5-year-old. But that started this like real love affair with reading and immersion into reading. What's really amazing for us as business people in this day and age and entrepreneurs in this day and age is we have truly access to the world at our fingertips, which is a good and a bad thing. So it's a good thing because we have, it's almost like fire. Fire could be, extremely productive and probably enabled the human race to survive when it might not have survived. But it also can be, as we've seen with the recent fires, it can also be this incredibly deleterious impact on communities and society as a whole, and unbelievably, unfathomably destructive. So I think the access to information is the exact same thing. It can be used for the good and the greater good of yourself and others. And unfortunately, which I myself partake in, it can also be used to sit and watch bad TV at 1 a.m. Or binge on Netflix. So I think the big difference is access to information. We have unfettered access to unlimited information. I mean, I used to sit and read encyclopedias, and I used to think that was incredible, that I could think of anything I wanted. I remember thinking about sharks and picking up the S encyclopedia and reading all about sharks and thinking how wonderful it was that all of this information about sharks or dinosaurs, another favorite subject of mine, was at my fingertips. Well, now think about, You go online and you type dinosaur, and Google responds with 47 million responses rather than
Yeah.
14 pages in Encyclopedia Britannica. So I think, you know, you have access to incredible, incredible information. What you do with that information is really the differentiating factor.
There's a good follow-up question to that. Do you think that it's always good for our brains to have this much access to this much information?
Yes, I think it is always good for your brain. Again, I think it's like anything. Vitamins are good for you, but you could certainly overdose on vitamins, and you know, protein and amino acids are good for you if you're following a regimented workout routine, but overconsumption of protein and amino acids could again have a detrimental effect on an adverse reaction to your health. So I think it's like everything measured and everything in moderation. But again, the key to me is the opportunity. We have the opportunity to better ourselves every single moment. So when you're talking about hacking and social hacking and all of the, I mean, we have the opportunity to, you know, truly rewire our brains and change what we're doing and improve ourselves on a daily basis, which is it's an incredible thing, because 20 years ago, we just didn't have that. And every single day there's advancements from your phone. I mean, your phone turns you into basically, you know, growing up, we'd watch all these movies about cybernetics and cyborgs. You're a cyborg. Your phone
Yeah.
is created. You're a superhuman individual if you've got that phone with you, because you have access to information that could have landed the moon landing. Your phone is as powerful, if not more powerful, than the computers.
More powerful.
More powerful. So
yeah,
just think about that for a moment, what's at your fingertips.
yeah,
On top of that, the other really interesting thing that I think is we have access, and this is part of it, but we have now lived through thousands and thousands of years of history, hundreds and hundreds of years of recorded history, and now we have all that recorded history again at our fingertips. So to not look at history and learn from it and say to yourself, how do I become more informed, more educated, and make more, you know, sagacious, more prescient decisions based on this access to information? If we don't do that, is really, you know, the sin is on us. Do you mind if I read something? It'll take 30 seconds.
Oh, please, that would be great.
Yeah, so I read this to the class, and it's just a little example that I think is something that your listeners will pick up on, and they'll see the value almost immediately. So upon the extinguishment of the contagion, empowerment of the working class laborers and of women was matched by the weakening of the property classes, as landlords were forced to accept lower rents for their holdings upon a determination that it was better to receive something than nothing. Lower rents, fewer obligations, and longer leases all had the effect of tilting power and benefits towards urban residents, which was further enhanced by a prolonged fall in interest rates. The results were remarkable, as wealth was more evenly distributed across society, which caused the demand for luxury goods to soar as more consumers were able to purchase items that were previously unaffordable. A shift in favor of the working young, who were better positioned to take advantage of the opportunities that were opening up before them. I knew an upcoming generation with better prospects and better paid than their parents set about spending their newfound wealth on things they were interested in. The rise in wealth and more equal distribution of such resulted in better health, diets, and a general improvement in life expectancy. Now, if I stop that right there, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it just sounded like I'm taking a guess that it's something from history, like during the plague or something, you know, like after the.
You're exactly right. So
Oh, am I really?
Yeah. So I stopped right before the next line, which is, in fact, London life expectancy rose dramatically after the Black Death. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
But if I didn't add that, you would listen to all that, and I removed one word from the entire paragraph. The one word was empowerment of the peasantry, and I just replaced that with working class. That's all I did. And that is exactly that paragraph. Now, if you read that and I didn't say London's life expectancy rose dramatically after the Black Death, you would assume we were talking about COVID. right?
And literally I was sitting here going, wait, is he reading something from the news? And then I'm like, wait, hang on, it's too formal. So I'm thinking, no, maybe it's in the past. And I'm like, that's like a history lesson from Black Plague, but it sounded like you could read that today.
Today. Now listen to this.
Yeah.
This is interesting, Chris. The interests of landlords and tenants were more closely aligned, resulting in collaboration and the likelihood of mutually beneficial agreements. Empirical data shows that urban wages rose dramatically after this period. The plague arguably ushered in a golden age of Europe. So reading that, you've got to sit there and say, everything that we just read or you just listened to, we're viewing in some way, shape, or form, actually closely resembling everything that I just read. So
yes.
Why would we not believe that there's some kind of golden age going to be ushered in along the same lines as what the Black Death did during medieval Europe? Now, will there be differences? Of course, but the real key with this is, what can you take from that? What can be learned from that? And what can be applied moving forward in the next 10, 20, 30, 50 years to better yourself, better society, better civilization as a whole? So that was just something I thought was very interesting, and something that, again, it just shows that everything is cyclical, and we have to be able to take advantage of the fact that generations have lived before us. We've all heard standing on the shoulders of giants. Well, we have true giants of industry and giants of law and incredible individuals. And we have the absolute unfettered, unrestricted access to their information. So again, if we're not taking advantage of it, we're doing a disservice to us and society and civilization as a whole.
Yeah. Okay, we had two questions, and both of them were good, so I want to read them. So this person, Mandy, she says, I feel like I forget things quicker because I rely on the internet a lot. I rely on the internet to remember for me. Is that okay, or should I try to remember things myself?
That's a super interesting question for two reasons.
It is.
Yeah. So the first reason it's really interesting for me is, as a lawyer, we are expected to have these superhuman memories oftentimes, and we're supposed to have these abilities of recall, which some of us do and some of us don't, which actually has prompted me to, amongst other reasons, start a supplementation line for lawyers called ESQRX. And the first product we will release is a cognitive support based on memory and recall and brain health, just cognition and cognitive.
Can I use it if I'm not a lawyer?
Absolutely, yeah. Because
I have a terrible memory.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited about it. It's with Stone Pharmaceuticals, my friend Dr. Devin, who you will see on Instagram, but he's an absolute beast. And we've put so much time and energy and resources into creating truly, truly unique products. But back to the question that was just asked by Mandy, it's super interesting. It's something I think about all the time, because I'll read something and 20 minutes later, I'll think to myself, why couldn't I remember that? And then I'll remember, someone's name that I'll bump into in the Grove or the Village, and I haven't seen them for 12 years. And you think to yourself, why do you have this odd selective memory? So I actually read a lot about that because, it was something I didn't really have an answer for. And again, I have access to every piece of information ever created. And without going into or belaboring the point or the science behind it, I just think that it's one of those things you just don't beat yourself up about. I mean, someone says to you, oh, remember that one movie? And you say, oh, yeah. And you sit there and you can't remember it. But then 20 minutes later, you remember something that is seemingly a superhuman ability to recall. So I've stopped beating myself up about it. But with that being said, I do believe that there is certainly brain supplementation and cognitive support supplementation that can enhance and invigorate your ability to recall. So I would suggest any of those.
That's wonderful. Maxie tried to talk you into a sample, but I just want you to remember who you liked better.
Chris, when I have one bottle left, you know where it's going.
Thank you. You hear that, Maxie? Just saying. Let's see. We did have another question. I think we'll make this our final question, and then I want to ask you about your company. Yeah. So after COVID, there may be some people who really want to step into entrepreneurship. Is there any advice that you can give them post COVID to go and take that risk?
Yeah, I think everything measured would be the advice that I would give. So a lot of people say dive in head first, and I would say dive in head first, but make sure the pool's deep enough, make sure there's a lifeguard, make sure you can swim. So measure your risk and acceptable risk, cost benefit analysis. Dive in head first, but do so safely.
I love that advice. I'm one of those guys in the past that I always dive in and don't even know how deep it is. And that's worked for me, but it's also meant I've broken bones at times, you know?
Yeah, and we've
And
all done that. We've all
yeah,
done that, Chris, and that's why I say I think everything in moderation. Just dive in, but take a quick glimpse of your surrounding and the factors around you before you dive in.
so the products you spoke about, are they usable by anybody? I mean, can anyone, or are they like, why are they specific for lawyers? What was it that made you say like these products are going to be great for lawyers?
Yeah, so I think the idea, the impetus for that was that I happen to know a lot of lawyers. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the board of directors for Loyola Law School. I work and interact with a lot of lawyers, and I think it's one of those professions where we are very, very flippant and not conscious of our health. So, and I think, Chris, if you think about it, the measure of success for a lawyer is how many hours do you bill? That's a fundamental measure of success. Now,
Yeah,
how would I bill an hour? I'm not billing hours sitting on the beach enjoying the sunset. I'm not billing
right.
hours jogging along the boardwalk. I'm billing hours sitting just like this in a odd compromised seating position with my back at an angle that is probably not natural, oftentimes forgetting about eating and drinking water and consuming copious amounts of caffeine instead. So I just looked at the profession, and I again made at least the realization for myself that there were certain true shortcomings as it relates to our ability as lawyers to take care of ourselves. And I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to create some kind of cognitive support, and I wanted to create a vitamin supplementation, and I wanted to do so to address what I think is a very noble profession, but it's a noble profession that is dealing with a huge amount of uncertainty as artificial intelligence and machine learning encroaches onto the normal profession or the normal billable workings of the profession. And I think we're also seeing mediations, which from my perspective is very, very interesting. Mediations are starting to be very, very more common and more prevalent and growing, which is why we took what we were building as a second floor law office in Long Beach and we're turning it into an online mediation center. So we're seeing this evolution of a practice, of a profession that, interestingly enough, really hasn't evolved in 400 years, short of the outfits. If you walked into a court in common law England, it would be quite similar to what you would do today, again, with the exception of the outfits. And imagine me saying to you, Chris, tell me the difference between any other profession over the last 4 years. There would be zero similarity, but the practice of law, zero. But the practice of law has differed very little. There's a great book about Abraham Lincoln's last murder trial, his trial before his run for presidency. And it's very interesting to read that book and watch as he traveled around the country as a circuit attorney. Because at that point in time, in that point in history, attorneys would travel around and perform in circuits. And one day they might have a land dispute, and the next day they might have a murder trial. And this particular book is about this very, very intriguing, historically accurate murder trial that he tried right before his presidential run. So interesting stuff. But again, the practice has not evolved, and we are not good at taking care of ourselves, and we're not cognizant of our health. And that was, again, the drive for me to do something that would say, hey, let's be conscious of the fact that we're not immortal, that what we do really does not behoove us or create a lasting, healthy lifestyle. And we need to be conscious of that.
Yeah. Charles, I can't thank you enough. This was awesome. I think I could have talked to you for hours.
I appreciate
which
it.
we will do. We will do over whiskey
We'll do
sometime
it.
after COVID.
Yes, let's do
We
that.
we will. We'll do it. I mean, I know Maxie's offering to help you with all of that stuff, but remember, I probably visited more of Scotland than she has. I'm just saying, you know.
You probably have. You know, us
Yeah.
Scots, we don't travel much around Scotland.
No, that's so weird. You know what? I actually understand that because I'm from New York, and I remember people saying, "Oh, you must go to the Statue of Liberty all the time," and I'm like, "No, I went there like once when I was a kid."
Yeah.
You know, like, and I'm like, man, I go to Scotland once a year. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, you've probably seen as much of Scotland as I have. So.
Oh man, I love your country. But this conversation was phenomenal. Some awesome lessons. I mean,
Thanks
truly
so much.
phenomenal lessons. I think there's a lot of takeaways. Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Keep doing what you're doing. I love your guys' content, and I think it's another great example of again, we have these opportunities. You guys do these 20-minute snippets, and but I mean these are content information packets that I can absorb in a 20-minute period. I can watch them and listen walking my dog and come away better for it. So I appreciate it. Thanks for making it, and really thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.